Chewy.
A little.
Today we're going to talk about superhero movies in general, specifically the ones from when I was a kid, and maybe even a little before that, and the ones that are releasing present day. And Lainey and Colton have watched some of each, and we're going to get feedback from Lainey on that. But I'll start out with this. We attempted to watch the 80s, well, it's actually 1978, I believe, Superman movie with Christopher Reeve a couple weekends ago. And both kids sat to start to watch it. And, well, why don't you give me what your impression of that was or what you felt about it?
I didn't like it because I already knew that he was going to be a superhero and there wasn't any action in it. So.
Right, because that film was an origin story which tells you how he got to be Superman. But what you're saying is that doesn't really interest you.
No.
How come?
Because, like I said, I know that they're going to be it. And I know that superheroes are obviously powerful. And so if he's not going to be powerful, and I know that he should be, I don't really.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is, well, let me see, you tell me if I'm wrong. It took a long time to get to the point where he was actually being Superman. Mm-hmm. And by the time that happened, we're very late in the film, and he does do some action things there, but by that point, you'd lost interest.
Right.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually agree with you now watching it after watching modern superhero movies. It was difficult to sit through. I was never a huge fan of the original Superman movie. I liked it, don't get me wrong. When it came out, it was amazing, and I was a 9-year-old kid. But I really liked Superman 2, was my favorite of those films. And I still think Christopher Reeve is a great actor, and he plays that role so well. And the supporting cast is good too. The film does, even though Gene Hackman is a great Lex Luthor, he's a great actor, the film does tend to slow down in those sections, especially with the Ned Beatty comedy, and both kids were just losing interest. And I would say, oh, there's more action coming up, and then we'd get to a segment which had either Superman or Clark Kent in it. And even though Christopher Reeve was very funny, and he plays Clark Kent just as good as he plays Superman, and you actually, despite how much he looks like himself as Superman, you actually see the very different characters. But there wasn't a lot of action in those scenes. And by the time the action really did roll around, you guys didn't seem like you were interested anymore.
Because Colton fell asleep, I think.
Yes, Colton did
and
fall asleep.
And I was doing like a puzzle thing.
Yes.
Not even.
So you were completely gone from the movie. We did try a little bit of one of the Batman films, even though they're too dark, and I didn't think we would get very far, and we didn't. You weren't really interested in that. Now, as far as the modern superhero movies, you've seen Spider-Man: Homecoming, you've seen both Guardians of the Galaxy films, you've seen Avengers: Age of Ultron and Avengers: Infinity Wars. You saw a little bit of Captain America one day on TV. I don't know if you realized it was. And we just watched Thor Ragnarok last night. Now, in general, like thinking about those films maybe versus the older films that I showed you, what do you think about the newer films?
They have a lot more action to them, so I like it because of that.
You seemed more engaged. It doesn't have long periods of time where there's inaction or too much. Now, that said, most of those films were not the origin stories. So there's a Thor film before Ragnarok. There's two films before it. The first film is his origin story. But that one did have considerably more action than the Superman origin story with Christopher Reeve. So chances are you might have liked it. But what I'm hearing is you want to see them just get down to the business of being a superhero is what you're interested in. You're not so much interested in how they became a superhero.
Right.
Right. Give me impressions of because Thor Ragnarok's been out for a while now, so doing a full-scale review of it seemed not as valuable, perhaps, as comparing these. Since you just saw Thor Ragnarok, what did you think specifically about that one?
I think it was great because I liked how they started off with him being like trapped, and then how it had some like funny moments in the beginning, and then it kept on going until where he met his brother.
Loki? Mm-hmm. We happen to have a little bit of an affinity for Thor anyway because we live with Loki. We call him Colton, but it's definitely Loki, god of mischief, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he loved it. He turned around about 5 times during the movie and kept saying, "I'm really liking this." That's his big catchphrase. When he has his own show, that'll be his catchphrase or his title. "I'm liking this." So when you got together with Loki,
I liked how I think Loki was like in a costume as.
well, he was pretending to be their father, Odin. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I liked how Thor, I think he knew that was Loki.
Well, he figured it out because he was watching the play that was being put on with Matt Damon and James Franco playing the parts of Thor and Loki, which was quite hilarious. I got that joke. You necessarily wouldn't have. Was anything really scary in the film for you?
Not really, except for when they first, well, 2 parts. When they first met
Hela, the sister?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then when the sister cut his eye, like his father.
Right, which was interesting. But neither one of you seemed upset by it. In fact, Colton turned around and said, "Oh, that's why he doesn't have the eye in Avengers Infinity Wars." He knew exactly what was going on. That film, Thor Ragnarok, probably is the film most like an actual comic book. You could, watching sequences of the film, like the beginning when he's hanging from the chain and he's spinning around, he's being funny, you could see that as a panel in a comic book, on a comic book page. Or when he was in the chair and he was being taken to the Grand Master and he was chained to the chair, or he was locked into the chair, and he was coming forward, you could totally see that as an illustrated piece of art in a comic book.
I also liked how he screamed at the end.
There was a lot of humor, but the humor was well placed in that film. Unlike other films that we've seen recently, like Last Jedi had some funny moments in it. But some of those moments, for me anyway, took me out of the film, whereas the funny moments here seemed to fit in. And like I said, this was the one that looked the most like you had taken a comic book and made it into a film. Other films have tried that. Ang Lee's Hulk movie actually tried to make it look like a comic book and was not as successful as this film, which didn't actually take that approach. So I think that says a lot for it. Other films that I mentioned were the Avengers films, Spider-Man Homecoming, which you saw, and Guardians of the Galaxy films. Of those, do you have favorites, including Thor, the ones that you've seen?
I like almost all of them.
Yeah, you guys seem to like all those characters a lot. And trying to go back and watch the older films, I think is problematic because the pacing is much different and the special effects. Did you believe Superman was flying in the Superman film that I showed you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did a really good job with that. It was known for that. It was the first time that people felt like it made a human look like they were flying, because Superman was a famous character for many years before that, and they felt that was a good achievement. So I think Christopher Reeve pulls that off, and the special effects people pull that off fairly well. When we get to Superman 2 and we have the fight with the 3 criminals, General Zod and what have you, so it just doesn't play off quite as well as like the special effects in the modern movies do. So it's hard, having seen Thor or having seen Spider-Man or seen Guardians of the Galaxy, and then going back to see an older film a superhero film, I think it's harder to believe what they're doing with their superpowers, maybe. I think that was a problem for you guys. I don't know. Yeah. Well, when he blew with, with his cold breath or whatever, or looked with his X-ray eyes, you guys are kind of, really? You kind of had one of those faces. So, okay. Well, I think we can go through them film by film a little bit and talk about. Was anything scary in Superman for you?
No.
Okay. Would you give Superman with Christopher Reeve a yummy or a crummy? It's a crummy. Okay. I would give it, when I was a kid, I would definitely give it a yummy. At this point, with the evolution of films and everything, I'd probably give it an edible, because still, Christopher Reeve is wonderful in both roles. Margot Kidder makes a great Lois Lane. There's several great supporting performances. But it's, he always will be Superman to me. But it doesn't hold up. It's more dated. It hasn't aged as well. What about Spider-Man: Homecoming? Anything you remember that was scary in it for you? No. Okay, yummy or crummy?
Edible.
Yeah, Spider-Man: Homecoming was crummy for me. I just didn't care for it. I liked the actor in the role. I just got very. It felt like Saved by the Bell goes to superhero school or something. I just didn't work for me. I didn't care for that one. Guardians of the Galaxy, the first film.
Yummy.
Yummy. Yummy for me. Anything scary in it that you remember?
Not exactly like scary, but only like when his mother was dying or something.
That's the second Guardians. Oh no, that's the first. You're right. That's the way the film starts out. You're correct. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. There's moments in there that I think as a parent I would screen the film first if you haven't seen it. It's a little heavier, and there's some darker moments and some inappropriate language. So it was one of these things where I had been a little bit misled about the subject matter when we went to the film, so I was very quick with my hand or to distract both kids. Second, Guardians.
Yummy.
Yummy for me as well. Same parent disclaimer on that one. For you, anything scary in that film?
No.
No?
Not really.
We've already talked about Avengers in here. How about Thor Ragnarok?
Yummy.
Definitely yummy. Comic book style violence, a little heavy here and there, but not, I don't know. Both kids really liked it and weren't bothered by it. I even, I had Colton close enough that I could, the only thing I thought that might bother him was when Hela reanimates the dead army and they're kind of skeletons and they're kind of glowing.
No, but
He thought that was great.
he actually laughed.
Yes, he was laughing during
That
that.
was a funny part, and then when he said I'm liking it was a funny part.
I wonder if we should be worried about him. Maybe he is Loki. Anyway.
But then, when you said who makes those circles, he was also like Doctor Strange.
Yes, he got very excited. He loves Doctor Strange. Ever since Avengers: Infinity Wars, he's been completely engrossed with finding out more about Doctor Strange. At first, he thought Doctor Strange was Superman because of the way he kind of floated with the cape and everything. And
I thought he was too.
right. But once he found out he was a different superhero and everything, and so he saw the circles, and I said, "Who makes those circles, Colton?" And his eyes got as big as saucers, and he was so excited and it's a great little part that he has in the film, and so it was a lot of fun. So both kids really enjoyed Thor Ragnarok. Again, as a parent, you might want to screen it first if you haven't seen it, and what have you. All right. Anything else to say about New World? There's still some really vintage stuff that's fun. The old Batman TV show, which is behind me here, I haven't showed the kids. I remember that being on in the afternoons when I would come home from school and I would watch that. And at the time, I just thought he wasn't heroic enough for me. Batman's supposed to be a superhero, and I wanted him to be a superhero, and he really wasn't. But now I understand the campy style of it, so maybe they would like that. The one that I'm kind of excited to introduce them to at some point is the Justice League cartoon, which was done by Bruce Timm and Joaquin Santos. Very good storytelling, especially the first couple seasons. Good work, good animation. I think that one is that Batman is maybe the Batman that I like the most at this point. And I didn't think that the Christopher Nolan ones would be appropriate to show them at all, so they haven't seen those. All right, anything else? No. Well, it's been super. How about that? Oh, that was efforted. Sorry.
Oh, damn.